Diuchard is Fáil Harnash. Welcome to this video, which is going to be all about these lovely combinations of symbols that I have here written on the top of my lovely new board. Things like ADH, AMH, OGH, UBH, what have you. When you have a vowel followed by a united consonant in the middle of an Irish word, sometimes at the end of a word, but in the middle of an Irish word, they are, for the most part, pronounced as some sort of vowel. And I say for the most part because it is not consistent as a topic at all. There are so many random words you will find in every dialect that just don't follow the pattern. So this video, even though it is in my pronunciation series, it's not really meant to be concrete. I'm making as many generalizations as I can, so that means I am leaving out a lot of information that I don't want to, but if anything, it's just supposed to be a suggestion if you're going to look into a specific type of Irish, to look into the example words that I give you. Look up in a dictionary or in whatever book you're reading the combination of letters that I'm about to show you, because you may find one word is pronounced one way and one word is pronounced another way. Like I did while researching this video, I found a load of exceptions in Cork Irish, and they are exceptions just because. And that means that this video was an absolute nightmare to put together. But anyway, I'm just going to get straight into it. The first pair that I want to talk about, thank God I could make some generalizations and I could pair some things together because, you know, there is a general pattern. The first pair I want to talk about is ADH and AGH. Now, when I talk about this, I'm also including whenever they have, you know, an E before them or an A after them, or whatever sort of, however extended you want to go, that most of the time, I say most of the time, doesn't really change the general vibe of how ADH and AGH or any other of these combinations are pronounced. So this letter combination is actually quite consistent. So what you find in Munster is you get a sort of schwa followed by an E sound. So what is pronounced I. And in Connacht, you get I, so very similar to the English sound I. And in Ulster, what you get generally is a long A sound. My example word is the word for face. So in Munster, you get I, Connacht, I, and Ulster, A. Moving on. IDH and IGH at first looks identical to the last pair. Generally what you get is Munster I, Connacht I, and Ulster A. Like with this word, which means cure, going Munster, Connacht, Ulster, you get lice, lice, and yes in Ulster. But there are a lot of weird outliers. I'm already getting into exceptions when I really don't want to, but there are a lot of weird outliers. The good news is when there is an outlier to the pronunciation of these letters, the dialects tend to actually agree with each other and it tends to be quite consistent. So we get words like IDH, which is generally pronounced with an I, Maidin, which is generally pronounced with an I, or Sneam, which is throughout the whole country, as demonstrated, generally pronounced with an E sound. So yeah, is IDH and IGH pretty similar to the first example that I gave? Yes, but it also works slightly differently. Next, I'm going to be talking about these three, AMH, ABH and OMH. This is a massive generalization, and I'm going to use these three as an example to demonstrate just how inconsistent and how many exceptions there actually are. So in general, what I can say about the pronunciation of these is you can get anywhere from an O pronunciation to an OW pronunciation. Munster leans more to the O pronunciation, Connacht leans more to the O. Sometimes it's O in Ulster, but Ulster also has the extra option of a long O sound, so O. So that gives us some consistency in examples, like the word for book. So Munster, very common, you'll hear leor. In Connacht, leor, and then in Ulster, leor, with, instead of a diphthong, just one long O sound. And that seems all well and good until you start to consider all these weird exceptions, like what appears to be a good example, the word for song, auran. In Connacht, as I just said, auran. In Ulster, you get the long O sound, oran. And then in most parts of Munster, you get auran, except for Cork, which traditionally has overan, for seemingly no good reason. In Munster, you also get this, which has an ABH in it, pronounced as tort. And in some parts of Galway, you get this, even though they say dáin, they say dúnach. So what is written as almost the same sound isn't. You can see I'm getting frustrated, but I'll move on because there are some consistencies, so that's why I was able to make this video. OGH and ODH. This is very similar, again, to the last three. I'm repeating myself. Generally, what you get in Munster is anywhere from O to O. In Connacht, it will usually be O, and in Ulster, you can find either O or the long O sound O. But what makes this pair stand out is Ulster has an extra option just to make things fly off the rails, which is a long A sound. So what I thought was going to be a perfect example, Munster, this word for choice, Munster, row, Connacht, row, and what I thought was going to be something like in Ulster, row or row. No, the Ulster pronunciation of this word is re. And even though they say fáriacht, which means pronunciation, which is spelled OGH and then a consonant, you have this word, which is techan, for seemingly no good reason. If you haven't gotten the message already, it's to be careful and look out for every single word you can possibly include in these groups. The next one actually is quite consistent though. UMH or UBH in the middle of a word will be pronounced however your dialect has a long U sound. So we know in Munster and Connacht, a long U sound is just U for the U, but in Ulster, they have more fronted vowels for their long vowels. So instead of U, what they generally have is U. That gives us this example word, do in Munster and Connacht, and do in Ulster. And this is a great example because in one of my favourite songs, My Yellow Mar, these two words are used to rhyme in one of the very last lines. So the line goes, Gile mar is an shell fe who is eja gileir fe chlochiv do. Now there is a reason why technically these two words don't actually rhyme. That's one of the things to look out for, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. And the last one is just a Munster feature. IMH or IBH, when within a word in Munster, will often be pronounced as a long E sound. So that is the reason why where other dialects have kivne and divin and korka rivne, in Munster these words are pronounced Quine, memory, E for eggs, and korka rine for the Dingle Peninsula. And that is the last pair that I want to talk about. I was going to include all the big differences of how these words are pronounced of how these combinations are pronounced at the end of a word. I will go through ADH. So if you have a word like bula, as you can just hear, in Munster, ADH at the end is pronounced as a schwa. Same as in Galway. But for Mayo actually and Ulster, so there's a bit of a split. For Mayo and Ulster, they use whatever their short U sound is. So in Mayo that's U, and in Ulster, as I said before, it's more of a fronted U sound like U. So you get Mayo, Bulu, and Ulster, Bulu. If I continue talking about everything being pronounced at the end of a word, I'm going to get into the realm of consonants really quickly. Like Cannig in Munster is Canna, and Canny in Ulster. And so consonants starts to come into everything. That is a good example to keep in mind. And it also gets into the realm of the way verbs are pronounced completely differently. So usually an IGH might be pronounced as a Y consonant sound in Connacht, but it does depend on the type of word. So because of that reason, I do plan to make a whole video on how to pronounce different verb endings. That is one of the exceptions. There are many, many others. As I said, one thing that really affects this phenomenon, the pronunciation of these letters and their combinations, is glides. So, the vowel sound might slightly change depending on if a broad consonant or a slender consonant comes directly after. If you are trying to learn Ulster Irish, what is extremely important to remember is, even though a lot of these consonant sounds have shifted to be pronounced as vowels, as I demonstrated, sometimes they still act as consonants, meaning that sometimes they can still separate one syllable from another. So even though I did say most of the country pronounces this word, for example, as do, and you can find the pronunciation do in Ulster, you can also find the consonant still splitting the syllables as dua. That is a big feature of Ulster Irish. If you're learning Munster Irish, one thing to look out for is any of the examples that I mentioned, including an M or an MH, I should say, used to be very heavily nasalized. So if you're trying to learn any traditional pronunciation of Irish, especially Munster Irish, because that held on to the nasalization for the longest time, things like coo or quine or auran would have historically had nasal vowels in them. So that's why I said technically do and ku don't rhyme with each other, because ku can be pronounced differently to the word for hound, let's say ku. Because of the M, it can be pronounced very heavily nasally as ku. So you get ku, cuine, and oran, like French. As I said, this video is just meant to be a suggestion to keep an eye out, look up the words if you're learning a specific type of Irish, and as I did when researching for this video, discover the weird exceptions that you will find in your dialect. I had no idea until a few days ago that in Cork, the pronunciation of this word, what I thought was lied, as similar to, let's say, aig, is actually pronounced traditionally as lead. So for no good reason, it's different. And that is almost it. I want to thank everybody for watching and for all of the lovely messages that I've received in my comments and in my messages over the last few months. It's really encouraging and it's really wholesome to see that my messages and the information that I'm spreading is having a good effect. Please ask any questions. I love nothing more than to answer a good question in the comments because I have nothing better to do. And as well, even though this video, as I prefaced, was meant to be really, really general, if I got anything wrong, please tell me as well. I'll probably end up remaking everything 5 years down the line. So, go to míle amach goibh carde, slán go fáil agus gnáidir se agus go manaidh